which is, again, something we always do, but that we're doing very differently given the circumstances we find ourselves in. So compliments to our teachers who are adjusting their practices and planning for meaningful conferences and feedback to families, as well as all of our staff associated with remote learning, looking at really customizing that feedback for that population. In addition to really honoring those processes, we're also exploring the Google Meet model and what everyone needs, making sure that we're surveying our staff participating, supporting those who've kind of done this work early to make sure they have the right tools and resources in the classroom, including technology, and really responding to ongoing guidance that we're getting from the State Department of Education about how to refine and review our procedures. And that guidance continues to be ongoing and shifting at times, so it requires a lot of close attention to our systems from attendance to training.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions?
Trying to connect the River East to Zoom. He's disappointed he can't live stream it.
Oh, gosh, okay.
Can I just, I apologize for being late, and I parked next to a black Honda Pilot that has the overhead light on, so I don't know if that's completely unrelated, but if somebody's Honda Pilot has the interior light.
That could be me.
I think it might be you because that Epic Arts sticker.
Yeah.
So, being.
Save the battery.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's thank you.
I have jumper cables if necessary.
So,
Oh, thank you. Oh my
No.
gosh, that would have been terrible. Huh? Wow. Okay. Audience of citizens. I think we're all in some official capacity tonight, right? I don't see anyone.
I did have a question for Mayor.
Yep. Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Mayor, we talked before about the testing to see where kids are grade level wise with the remote learning and under the circumstances. Any updates on testing, or when we look at testing the kids to make sure they're at grade level learning where they should
Yeah,
be?
that's yes, Jim. We always do that 3 times a year, and this fall, given the hybrid in September and access to devices and just honoring the fact that our learners of all ages were adjusting to new normals, we did that a little bit later in September, early October, and as soon as we wrapped up the in-person learners, we did also provide that opportunity to our remote learners, and were able to conduct those assessments remotely. We did that most recently with our 6th grade students who were the last to get devices. So we had just a few left to complete.
And then there'll be results will be made available to make sure to see if kids are keeping on pace or falling behind, or.
We have been sharing that information with our remote families, and it's typically part of the conversation at conferences at the elementary level.
Okay. Okay, so the consent agenda. We just need a motion that the East Hampton Board of Education adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Discussion first, sorry. All in favor? Aye. Okay. We don't have any recognitions tonight, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, moving on to committee reports. Student Board of Ed representative.
All right.
Hello.
So as far as school updates, class officer elections for each grade were held last week, and results for most grades have been posted and some are still pending. The Interact Club has their November general membership meeting coming up, and they continue with their ABC Women's Shelter Gift Drive, where each homeroom collects gifts for children. And kind of an update on the Google Meet model from the students' perspective. One of my classes, I have a teacher who's actually piloting it, and I just want to say that it's been going pretty smoothly so far on the days I've had to Google Meet into the classes. And then as far as fall athletics,
Robert, which class is that?
it's Nora del Bope with Spanish Ballet.
Great, thank you.
And as far as fall athletics, they've been wrapping up. The girls soccer team lost in the semifinals to HK, and they ended with a record of 9 wins, 1 tie, and 3 losses. The boys soccer team played in the Shoreline Championship last Monday, and they lost to HK 1-0 in a close game. And last week there was fall sports banquets in which all conference athletes and individual sports athletes were recognized with awards.
Great, thank you.
All virtual banquets this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
Oh, that's different.
We've stopped even using the word virtual, just because it's just implied for everything that we do.
We don't, yes. Personnel committee, Jen, Matt, no? Not yet,
Nope.
okay. And policy and curriculum?
Policy, we just met prior to this meeting. We have a couple first reads later on in the agenda. Also in the packets is policy 6114.81. This is the policy that we approved, giving the superintendent some flexibility in terms of making changes quickly. I've reread this a few times in the past couple of weeks, months, and I think that the language is still solid, but we did approve this in July, and in COVID years, that's like a decade. So I wanted to have everybody just give it a read and email me, you can call me, whatever, if you think there's language that we need to update in the policy meeting next week, so that we can kind of stay on top of that.
Okay. And finance, transportation, building, and grounds, we have not met since our last meeting several weeks ago, before our prior meeting, so no update there. And anything from Learn?
Yeah, we had our meeting virtually last Thursday. There was a really interesting speaker, the Superintendent Dr. Stringfellow from Norwich. I actually really enjoyed hearing about some of her programs. I think she's relatively new to Norwich, but she was in Rhode Island before. One of the things that really caught my attention was her immersive world language program for the youngest learners in like K and First, where they actually hired like a bilingual teacher who actually taught the classes in Spanish or French, and how quickly those students, like within a month, were really like absorbed into the language, and it was fascinating. And I can send that. They sent the presentation, her presentation. I'd be happy to forward it to anybody who would be interested. That was about it.
That is great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. And now superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you. Before we dive into the agenda, we just found out news this morning, and I'm going to let Karen give you the details. But you will recall at the last meeting, we were sharing the information that we shared with the Finance Subcommittee about the lack of PPE funds. We had been given $75,000 from the state, and we realized that we were going to need about $330,000 more than that to cover our cost just to reopen the buildings. So Karen, why don't you tell them, I know that some of the board members already know, but for people listening, exactly how much money we did get from the state.
Well, it's Thanksgiving week, and I'm very thankful for almost $334,000. Exactly what I kept asking for through all of the iterations since September. There were numerous times that we had a chance to redo the application from September up through just a couple weeks ago, and that's what we ended up with. So I believe that will cover the costs of what we have expended for the ventilation improvements, touchless fixtures, and extra cleaning supplies, masks, gloves, gowns, social distancing, plexiglass. So it was a successful attempt, and it looks like we're going to be whole.
Yeah. So when we questioned us getting $75,000 and towns along the shoreline getting $500,000, $600,000, what ended up happening was, as they were not able to produce receipts showing that they had actually spent that much, the money got put back into a pool instead of used elsewhere. And so the state is now covering all of our expenses, which Karen and I would have been happy with half of them. And usually our luck is East Hampton doesn't bubble up to the top of those lists. But I'm thrilled to say that we are whole for all of the opening expenses to prepare our schools for COVID. And that's really exciting that we're not going to have to say, okay, we've got to freeze this or dig into capital funds to pay for that. So yay for the state of Connecticut.
And thank you,
And
Karen.
if I can chime in real quick, I just want to publicly thank Karen for keeping on top of this and her unbelievable meticulous work and hounding of the state to get this done. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, no, it was over and over, submit this with receipts and validation, and there was $330,000 worth of work to get to $330,000. So Karen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
And a couple of things I wanted people to see as you come into the new town hall. We're very happy to feature East Hampton student artwork just outside our hallway. What we've come to realize is our hallway is the busiest hallway because the tax clerk and the town clerk are right across from us. So as people come in to pay their taxes or register to vote or anything else, they come right down our hallway, and right across from those offices, just to the right of our door, is this recessed area. And so we've started featuring artwork there, and then on either side of our door, we have student art. So we're very excited to turn white walls into a nice student art gallery. The frames came with us from 94 Main Street. We had invested in them a number of years ago. And next time you come in the building, just turn right and take a quick peek at student artwork. So thank you to our art teachers. It's been one of those years where I'm happy that we were able to get some artwork out of them. I know the kids have been working hard, but to put one more thing on the teacher's plate saying, okay, it's got to be this big, it can't be 3D, it's got to fit in the frames, they were able to fill up everything. So a big thank you to them. Board members, especially because we have some new board members, I wanted to go through just the NESDEC enrollment packet here. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview, and if you have questions, you can certainly ask me. But because we are a member of the New England School Development Council, part of our dues is they'll do these enrollment projections each year for us. Keep in mind, they're most accurate a year out, and I'll explain that as we go on. So this is the packet they give us. The first page is just historical enrollment. So this is actual enrollment. They go back 10 years. And you can kind of see the third column is the school year. So these are our actual figures from 2010, 11, all the way up to this year, 2020, 21. The next page is kind of a graph of just our historical enrollment. Keep in mind it's only K through 12. It does not include pre-K. It does not include magnet students, VOAG students, or outside special ed students. So it's just an internal planning of those students in your K through 12 grades. And you can just kind of take a peek historically of where we've been. The next page is the important page. It's the one with a little declining staircase on it. And if you look at the second row from the top, where it's in the blue column where it says school year 2021-22, that's the figure that we look at closely. If you go all the way to the right, that is the projected enrollment. Keep in mind they tend to be very conservative, and we usually see about 10 to 12 students higher than that. But given the fact that we're not sure everybody who was eligible for kindergarten this year actually enrolled for kindergarten, they may have said, the students on the cusp, let's wait till next year where it's a little bit more normal. But then if you look at where our kindergarten numbers are this year, we're pretty close to where we've been the last couple of years. So, but this is the main page that I look at. The next page is a 10-year prediction of where we will be. Now, as soon as you move 2 or 3 years out, it becomes less accurate, because I looked at the report from 5 years ago when I first arrived, and they have 2020 at 1780, K through 12. 5 years ago, when they did the 10-year projection, for this current school year, instead of 1780, they had us at 1678, a full 100 students lower than we actually are. So this is kind of a guess based on housing trends and other things like that. But once you get 5 years out, it's really not that accurate. So I would not look at 2030 and say, are we really going to be 300 students less than we are now, given all the things that change over the course of 5 to 10 years. But it's just curious to see. And the next page just shows some trends over time. It's kind of a 20-year historical and projected. The following page, between birth to kindergarten relationship, they use live births in the community as the greatest predictor. But what we're proving is, since about 2010, for the kids that are entering the class of 2015, our kindergarten relationship, those who enroll in kindergarten, are higher than the births, the live births that they use as their figure. Just another curiosity. And then just some additional data and just some big picture New England statistics for you to go through. If you have any questions, we can revisit them at the next meeting, or you are welcome to call me. It's kind of a curiosity piece. I think the important thing for us is that, that page with that declining step and looking at, what they predict next year's enrollment will be. Even though they predict it to be about 24 students lower, I think we're going to see that our kindergarten numbers will be a little higher than perhaps they predict, given the fact that there could have been students that stayed home. These numbers reflect those students who chose homeschooling just for this year. So we haven't pulled them out there reflected as still being part of our enrollment. I think it would be a mistake to say, for those families that indicated they wanted to do homeschooling during the pandemic, that they are never coming back. The vast majority of them, should vaccines go the way it appears they'll go, and we're open at somewhat normal next fall, I think we've got our planning is to assume all of them will be back in our school.
So the numbers never reflected those kids as being...
They are reflected here.
Okay.
So we have...
But obviously kindergarten, you couldn't do that.
Right. So we had about 30 students who are not our typical homeschoolers who decided to homeschool. Rather than do remote learning, they wanted to do their own thing. We feel most of them are going to come back. So these numbers reflect that population as back for next year. Any immediate questions?
No.
No, okay. Like a teacher, I gave wait time for people to respond. That's good classroom practice, that you make children answer. Okay, so let's move on to a COVID update that ties into our enhanced hybrid model. So over most of our meetings, we've put this chart up. And the reason we put it up is because DPH guidelines have labeled towns as yellow, orange, and red. Several weeks ago, we moved into the red category because we had more than 15 cases per 100,000 people. And that's that odd formula that they use just to, be able to compare you to everything else. Keep in mind that, if you look at that bottom, if you can read that, it says, schools shouldn't consider adjusting the model necessarily until they start hitting 25, which is also reflected in the State Department of Education guidelines, which talk about 25 plus cases per 100,000. And it doesn't necessarily mean shut down the school, it just means, consider less in-person learning. So several weeks ago, when we moved into the hybrid, this was kind of the picture of the state. Southeastern Connecticut was kind of had that big outbreak concentrated in the New London and Norwich area. And then towns to the west of us were kind of facing an outbreak, and then we got cut. This was the first map that we appeared in as a red state. Cases go up, the map really has lost any meaning at all. I mean, it's everybody's red. So they developed a secondary map, which shows the actual number of cases during November 1 through 14. And even though everybody's red, they've broken it down to these numbers versus, and this should be 1,001 to 5,000. I cut that off, sorry. But we're kind of in that, this area right in this category here. So even though all of these towns are red, there's now different degrees of red. So, here's what makes it difficult, is that as we move forward, the DPH guidelines are great guidelines for restaurants, churches, social gatherings, other gyms, etc. But as the cases go up in Connecticut, we're still finding that schools are kind of maintaining a lower level of transmission. So we've put together a COVID-19 dashboard. Amy had pointed me towards Glastonbury Public Schools that had put together a dashboard. And, as you think about it, if we start using our own internal metrics, the DPH metrics no longer are valid because the state's not recommending a total shutdown at red. And except for Bridgeport and Hampton and other places that are going into closures, everybody else is remaining open. So the metrics I think we should start looking at, and Amy, thank you for pointing this out, is our own internal metrics. So this was shared with the board on Friday, and it was shared with the public today in my superintendent's update. Every Monday I'm going to include the dashboard. And the dashboard is also on our website for those people that don't get the update that are curious. So what we've done in our dashboard is we are including the number of students with positive confirmed cases who are currently isolated. So this is for each school, and we're doing a snapshot each week. So every Wednesday we're going to do the dipstick of this is what the case is in our school. It doesn't necessarily make sense to do cumulative cases because we need a picture right now, much like the map of the states, or the map of the towns, which has kind of lost its meaning. This has meaning for us because this is what's happening right now. And so obviously we're doing the same thing for the number of staff with positive confirmed cases currently isolating. Now keep in mind this is as of Wednesday, November 18th. We're going to update it every Wednesday. In fact, if we were going to update it as of tonight, you have one at the high school, a staff member who has tested positive. But the good part, because it's, the amount of time people are out or quarantining, we're not going to lose that information. It's going to get caught up in next Wednesday's information. So keep in mind, this is Wednesday, etc. Number of students quarantining due to close contact, and the number of staff quarantining due to close contact. Now, keep in mind, while we're identifying people who are quarantining, this does not mean they had to quarantine because they were exposed at school. A lot of this is people who just through a social gathering or some event outside of school have to quarantine, but because we're keeping track of those people who are also quarantining, we do not allow them to come to school. These are also reflected in this number. Let me point you right to the middle school. 15 of that 26 is a quarantine due to an outside event that a number of students were at. Through no fault of their own, a non-school related event, 15 students are exposed, so they are now quarantining. Also keep in mind, just because people are quarantining does not mean that they are going to become COVID positive. I am knocking on wood. Every student that we have been responsible for quarantining because they had close contact in school, none of them have come down with COVID. They've gone through the quarantine period and they have come back because they obviously did not come down with COVID. So I think that this becomes, instead of going back to that red map and saying, okay, we've hit 15 and we're going to keep going up a little or down a little, but we may be red until December, January at this point. Though the state's positive rate came down from 6% to 4.8% today, but every day it appears to be a little different. I think this is a much wiser metric for us to use when we make our decision. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the principles. Every Wednesday by noon, this information is due. We put it together. Board members will get it. The community will get it, and it will be up on our website.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, though. I mean,
Correct.
You have to do both. I mean, they're both going to have an impact on schools and the community and whatnot, and the decisions that are being made. So
Absolutely.
This is great, and I like the layout of it, and it's good to understand what's happening in the schools, but the companion has to be what's happening in the community.
Correct. And Jeff, what's fascinating about that is, back in October, when we were kind of a yellow, even before becoming orange, our numbers kind of looked like this as well. We had our first real high school case that required quarantining right Columbus Day. On Columbus Day, Mr. Werner and Mr. Warner were doing contact tracing and phone calls and everything. And the numbers kind of looked like this. So if we had started this, with the Wednesday after Columbus Day, all the way through now, it would not look much different than this. But what's fascinating is, let's hold the state's map next to it, and you say, okay, we're consistent, and the state is going up. So you're right. I don't think we ignore. And obviously, if Russ Melmed said, Paul, Chatham Health District, based on recent numbers, we should close down the schools for a 2-week period. There's going to be other people that tell us that we have to close if we have to close. The governor is pretty committed to keeping schools open. And what's fascinating, and I wish I had saved a copy of this report. I shared it with the subcommittee, the policy subcommittee. We were talking about this. But the number of students with COVID, if you look at remote learners, hybrid learners, and full in-person learners, they're all getting COVID at exactly the same rate, which speaks to the fact that COVID is coming into their house through a parent that works or an event outside of school. But you would think that the in-school or the hybrid kids would be higher, but it's pretty consistent that remote learners are getting COVID at the same rate as our full in-person learners. So, I'm complimenting us, and I'm complimenting every school in Connecticut that, in essence, schools are doing a pretty good job around us. For us to have numbers like this as numbers are spiking, it doesn't mean that something can't happen. Schools around us, one swim team gets it, and now all of a sudden 16 kids are quarantined like that, and then it spreads. Anything could happen, and I think it's why I am recommending some caution as we move forward, because we're entering the period where college kids come home, family gatherings are happening, so there's a lot to do to look at and ask people to be careful. So this is this is information that if you had asked anybody in August, yeah, we're going to open the schools, but by Columbus Day we're going to be shut down again. It just hasn't happened that way, and I compliment teachers, I compliment the administrators, I compliment kids and families that, our biggest concern was nobody's going to want to wear masks, it's going to be an issue, we're not going to be able to teach. It is, we're able to control it right now, and it's due to the outstanding effort of our teachers, our principals, and certainly our kids and our parents. So here's what I'm recommending at this point. That grades PK through 3, so our preschool through K, return to full 5-day per week of in-person instruction on Monday, December 7th. It gives us time, if families have, had issues with outbreaks, we're going to know that when we come back into that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to start to see kids quarantining or kids coming down with fevers or other things like that. So we could pull this back. But I think when we went into the hybrid, we told families that we were going to come out of the hybrid on December 7th. Grades 6 through 12 remain in hybrid, and we're encouraging teachers to pilot the Google Meet on at-home days. That's already started, and I have to compliment our teachers that have already started doing that. I think Eric mentioned 8. Mary and I got a list of several more today who are interested. I think we have 15 at the high school. So, we're starting to reach a critical mass of teachers who are at least trying it. And I'm grateful to our teachers who are just saying, okay, we can add that in there. And the reason that we're pushing the Google Meet is if we're going to stay in hybrid long term, keep in mind, we designed hybrid to be short term. We got 4 weeks out at the beginning of the year, and then we went into it quickly when we became a red town. And, if we knew what we would do now, I'm not sure we even needed to go into the hybrid when we first became a red town. But if we're going to stay in the hybrid, and the reason I'm recommending 6 through 12 in the hybrid is that I think with college students coming around and gatherings, it's more likely that a college student is an older brother to somebody in the middle school and high school. So I think just to give us more time in the hybrid, get through the holidays, and see where we are. It prevents it from spreading quickly. A lot of times when we've been in the hybrid, somebody comes down with it, but they haven't been in school when they were symptomatic, so we don't have to quarantine kids and teachers. Or if they come into school, we're quarantining less kids at this point. But obviously, if we're going to stay in a model that was designed for short-term planning, we've got to do a little more for students on that. For example, from a Group A student, I'm in school on Monday, Tuesday. I have distance learning on Wednesday, and on Thursday, Friday, I have kind of like homework / self-directed learning. What we're trying to do with the Google Meet is create something that looks like this. So follow along Group A, they're in school on Monday and Tuesday at the top. Group A, B has distance learning, and then Group A moves home, stays home on Thursday and Friday, but they Google Meet into the teacher's classroom. It allows learning to continue on instead of just covering 50% of the material. We're gonna push for a higher percentage of material covered than that.
Would the Wednesdays be synchronous?
The Wednesdays would mainly be asynchronous. 4 days with the Google Meet, we're looking for more of an asynchronous day just on that Wednesday. So, this is where we hope to get. We have teachers that have already made the move there. Mary can tell you about numbers and what our pilot looks like. On December 14th, we're going to have, because we don't have a meeting in 2 weeks, it's in 3 weeks, the way the dates fall. We're going to give you some nice statistics about the number of teachers doing it. We'll give you some anecdotal information on what's working great, what's not working. Robert, we'll expect a full report from you as far as a few more teachers perhaps of yours, Google Meet. I'd love to hear from your perspective.
I think I have a couple more starting like right after Thanksgiving.
Right, so we have several teachers that are starting up on the 30th, on the 7th, on the 14th. And, our goal is by January, around the second semester, to have all teachers there. And, we'll give you more of a report on what that looks like on December 14th. I don't know, Neil or Sean, if you want to add anything. I know we had a meeting of teachers at the high school today. We're meeting with the middle school teachers tomorrow. Mary already sent out her first survey to our teachers who are piloting. please add anything from the union perspective, where I'm certainly grateful to the union, those teachers who are trying it out, and those teachers who are, watching others and preparing to model as well. But please add anything.
As we evolve from this, like Paul said and Mary said, we're looking for feedback from the teachers that have volunteered to start this, to sort of kind of train, kind of give feedback and advice to all the teachers, so we have all the right technology, all the right mindset going in to do both at the same time. Because that's another level for teachers to be able to see the students on screens and see the students in front of them. So it's a gradual process, but that's where we're at so far.
And another thing also, Paul and Mary were talking about, to make teachers, there's a lot of anxiety with some of the teachers, because this is totally a different way to look at teaching or perform it. Also allowing release time where we can go into a classroom to see a teacher who's piloting it. So instead of watching like a webinar, you go in that classroom, you get to watch the teacher who's been piloting it, and you figure all the ins and outs. They get to tell you the secrets to it, what works, what doesn't work, any suggestions. So that would be great, basically hands-on. So.
And the reason we're piloting and taking our time is because ultimately when we get this running up, around the second semester of school, the Google Meet will not be an option for students. Attendance is going to it will be expected for each course, grades 6 through 12. Cameras on and participating. There was a little more leeway granted to towns and schools last year during the pandemic. However, the state is requiring student attendance and monitoring what model we're in and how we're taking attendance for that model. So we want to make sure that we do it effectively and we do it right, and that students understand the expectations. So this is a nice way, Robert said he's got it in one class, so he's going to have it in two. As teachers learn, our students will learn the expectations. We anticipate, towards the end of January, the start of the second semester, obviously if we're still in hybrid, to have a very solid model here. I will tell you that this model also meets the needs of those students who are quarantining. If you have to quarantine for 14 days, with the weekends in there, that's 2 weeks worth of instruction. And that's a long time for, Robert was one of those students who was quarantined, and, it was like, okay, get some homework and keep in touch. But now a student who's quarantining would be able to Google Meet in on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So it just creates that opportunity for students who have to quarantine to be part of the classroom. It's not perfect. You really need to be there the 2 days a week, but at least it's better than just passing the homework home and say, good luck and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Now, during the course of the pilot, are you also working on any technical kinks that may be in the works? I mean, so the teachers can be teachers instead of being...
Correct. So we are giving each teacher a separate Chromebook, so that they can still use their laptop to connect to the whiteboard or the laptop for other things. And basically, like I have this going here with Nancy and Jack Lukowski and Eric Kissinger and Chris and Martha, we're conducting our meeting and they're watching us. So, it requires a little more interaction than for a teacher in a classroom, but in essence, the goal is for them to, be able to get the basis of the instruction for that day.
Okay.
And Paul, if I could add.
Yes, go right ahead, Chris.
Okay, no, first I want to thank Neil and Sean for those comments. That was good input. And I just want to add, kind of tag on what Jeff was saying. If during all this piloting, any of the teachers identify any technical issues, the sooner the better we know, and Rich knows, we can get those addressed.
Yeah, now I will tell you that in November, early November, Rich and Sarah added a load of Wi-Fi hotspots throughout middle school, and I think middle school was the most efficient. But obviously, if we have a number of kids on their computers, we want to make sure that the connectivity is good. So I think we'll be prepared, but I think we're gonna learn a lot in the pilot over the next 8 weeks until it's full install. Anybody have questions?
Yeah, how are the teachers raising questions and concerns? Like, where do they go?
So Mary is doing a weekly survey,
Oh.
and we're certainly going to encourage them to reach out to their team leader or principals. With any concerns, let us, I don't want them to wait till the Wednesday survey comes out to say, I'm having trouble logging in. The kids are used to using the Chromebooks and the Google Meet, so to have the filming done by a Chromebook seems wise. We're able to purchase a certain type of microphone that teachers can use so that the kids can hear them as the teacher moves around the room. I don't expect the teacher to carry the Chromebook if they're going to help a group in the corner. But you want to make sure that the kids hear what's going on in the classroom. Certain things will be missed. It's not a perfect system, but it's better than nothing on the 2 days.
I don't think that finding a perfect system is necessarily the goal, given the,
Correct.
the world as it is.
Yeah.
Well, two things. I'm just wondering if having the kids in class also on their Chromebooks as part of the meet, so that the teacher can have everybody, managing, even though they are in person, and might be easier than that disconnect between the students who are at home and the students who are in person.
Right, and I did hear people suggest that as, have everybody log into the Google Meet. But also understand, we're doing something different than some schools. Some schools are asking the teacher to just sit at the desk and teach from there because they're using a stationary camera. With the Chromebook, it gives you a little more, I don't know how well they can see it, but we have the Chromebook pointed to the screen. If we wanted to move around and you wanted to see them, we could do that. A camera doesn't quite allow you to do that. So I'm not asking teachers to stay stationary. I still want the people in school to benefit from, having that teacher in class. And we're obviously being cautious as well. Sean?
If I could just add to that, one of my sisters is a teacher at Bridgeport, and she's done that for some of the classes, and she said it's very odd because she has the students right in front of her that are just watching the screen instead of her. And when you have the kids in front of you, that's your time to shine, that's their time to interact with you. And she said it's very odd to just have kids in front of you staring at the screen when you're right in front of them doing your job. So,
yeah, well,
it's something to
I
think about.
It was just a thought, but my other concern is if you have we've been talking about the school end of things, but do we have families that have Wi-Fi issues in their homes? Because
So we've delivered hotspots to any family that needs it. And we would certainly ensure once we do this, principals reach out and say, if you do need Wi-Fi, let us know. But even last year, we were delivering Wi-Fi hotspots to family and paying for them. And our issue is not as great as, certain cities would be.
well, I know, even just there are dead zones in East Hampton that,
Yeah, I think last spring we worked a lot with families on that issue, and then so we have some of that information and continue, as we receive those requests to assist with the access.
Yeah. As a parent, as a Board of Ed member, of course, I'm always concerned with, the education of every child. So I'm so heartened by this whole thing. I think it's just fantastic. And also, I wear a parent hat. And my daughter is fortunate enough in the middle school to have 2 teachers on her team piloting this. And the communication that we've received from these teachers has been just absolutely incredible. The initial communication I was so moved by it. The upbeat approach, the enthusiasm, we're in this together, we're modeling, I can't think of the exact words that they use, but like resilience and we're all going to do this and we're going to make the best. I've never seen anything like it. I was so impressed and just so, as a parent, I just feel so good about it. And I thank everyone, the teachers, the staff, the administrators, just everyone for this, because it's just so necessary, to make those connections and to keep the learning going and to touch, and be there, whether it's, in person or on a computer. It matters, and we see that and we appreciate that so much. So thank you. Thank you very much to everybody involved in this. It's really, really impressive. So thank you.
I just want to quickly echo Nancy's sentiment. I know I'm a million miles away, but I have had the same experience with the 2 teachers that work with my children, and the positivity has really been inspirational. And again, thank you. It's really been great so far.
I just have a quick question. Are we looking to do this with the elementary also?
Yeah, right now our plan is to bring the elementary back. If we felt we were going to have the elementary in hybrid, it would be a discussion that we would begin to have. The complexity with elementary is, they don't move from course to course.
Sure.
like the high school and middle school. And I'm not sure we want, a first grader logging in at 8:30 and staying on till 3:30.
Right.
But I think we could get somewhere a little closer to like the Wednesdays where they have the morning meeting and, they log in for the reading lesson and the math lesson. We have yet to have those conversations fully at the elementary level.
Okay.
Yes?
I just wanted to offer a couple of things from working closely with the pilot participants so far. And also, I think in a lot of, statewide, a lot of the focus has been on 612 because of the limitations of co-holding environment.
Sure.
So that K-5 has a little bit more of a self-contained.
I was just thinking it would be nice to have more options for elementary than remote or in, because the Wednesday model where they're meeting for reading and ELA and math, it's really going well. So
Yeah. And we're kind of sensitive to the elementary classroom where on Thursdays and Fridays, you have your 9 or 10 kids in. It's not quite the same as a middle school and high school class kind of sitting at their desk. Sometimes elementary kids don't quite always sit. The activities are designed to, when they're doing math and reading it, they're doing it in groups all over the room or they're moving around. So, to keep that population occupied and the Google group occupied, we just haven't really begun those deep conversations yet. People know that it's on the horizon and there's discussion to be had. But I felt like our most pressing need was, to really work with middle school and high school to make sure that works.
So 2 related things. I mean, the technical bits can certainly work out in the environment of working with the older kids, but it sounds like pedagogically it's an entirely different scenario with the younger kids. And, correct me if I'm...
Yeah, I think our K-5 team would echo those sentiments. I just want to start by thanking Neil and Sean. It's been a real partnership in thinking about how to structure the pilot. And we had we will survey people if they want to give us that feedback each week. And our initial survey was very positive about the impact in terms of has it been a positive experience. And everyone was either agree or strongly agree for the students, and was it a positive experience for the teacher, and it was either strongly agree or agree. They felt that their challenges were workable, so they identified that there were problems, but they felt like they were problems that could be addressed and resolved, that they were, insurmountable. And they gave us feedback on what do you wish you had before you started? What did you wish you know that you now know? And they identified specific trainings or experiences that were helpful, the visits to other classrooms. Some of them identified that the resources we've invested in to be more flexible across settings were very helpful. we talked about what technology best supported the process, and if there was anything that it needed. Are there things you recommend, and we continue to troubleshoot that? Was there anything that you didn't ask that you wanted us to know? And most of them talked about how the model provided them seamless instruction and to be proactively engaged with all of my learners every day. It's not only good for instruction, but considering the isolation our students have experienced, this allows all the students to interact with each other every day and remain a part of our whole class community. I have seen notable improvements in student understanding and participation from the first hybrid model to this new Google Meet model. The bottom line is that my students are benefiting from my consistent direct instruction. Others said, the connectedness, talking about students saying how good it was to see their teacher that day. So I think while I don't in any way want to minimize the challenges of this for all involved, I think the benefits so far, it's a very small slice of the survey. We only had 7 people when we first started, but they've been really positive. And I had asked if they'd be willing to support what we'd like to create, which is, Amanda, to some of the points you were bringing up, the East Hampton Public Schools Google Meet Guide, which would be all tips and recommendations for teachers based on their colleagues' experiences, including getting down to the level of when do you want everyone to log into a Google Meet, you're in person and at home, and when do you not want to do that? Because the teachers are already talking about when that helps, when it doesn't. Much as Sean was pointing out, does it reduce engagement, or maybe there's a time in the discussion? It's actually very valuable. They're looking at what supporting tools they're using by content area. So I was having a conversation with one of our math teachers who was like, Jamboard is the tool we want to use because I can model effectively. It's different needs for different content areas, and that I think only expands as the pilot grows at the high school, where we get into very specified courses and instructional models. So we'll continue to seek their feedback, to engage our teacher community in guidance to their peers and colleagues, to give more information to parents about how to best support their learner at home in this process. We've identified baseline technology and communicated that to teachers of what they'll receive to get started and what kinds of things they might want to review and consider, and we'll work within our means to support them. And I think one of the things that a teacher said to me was, the benefit that I have in November is that I know my students, and I think we can't underestimate that enough, how much knowing a learner really impacts your instruction. So they have a relationship as opposed to we had started in September. And they have done remote instruction with these learners on Wednesdays. It's different when half of them are there and half of them aren't, but they were able to see those advantages and how they can leverage those experiences with their students to try and make the model as effective as possible. And I think we really want to communicate a problem-solving mindset that this is a process to begin, to explore, to find our best practices here in East Hampton, where are the issues in terms of technology, troubleshoot as much as we can so people feel confident moving forward.
I like the fact that you refer to it as a process that you're working through, because I think it's very important to, and I couldn't stress it strongly enough, from my perspective at least, to not rush the pilot assessment and that whole learning process and the constant cycle of learning and relearning that goes through that. I mean, for anybody who's gone through any sort of reorgs or change of process at their other jobs, the ones that are rushed are the ones that don't stick, and the ones that everyone hates, So I mean, we want to be successful. We need to take time. The peer kind of training thing that Sean mentioned. Do we have any PD time coming up?
It's not in the district calendar until February.
Is it possible to modify the calendar to drop a PD day somewhere in there where there could be some peer training, maybe toward the end of the pilot process? I don't know if we're allowed to even do that, but that could be something that could be very beneficial for those who want that. I mean, teachers used to learning that way anyways. I mean, there's a reason that student teaching happens. Being in the classroom, in that environment. And so this is another instance of that.
Yeah. Well, we're most interested in some release time during the school day when teachers are actually doing this, so they can go in and see other teachers. And keep in mind, our pilot began in November 7th, so we're a couple weeks into it. But for those teachers that haven't started yet, there's still a full 8 weeks before our beginning of the second semester, which is our target. So, there's plenty of time to try it. We've suggested that, even if you don't do it for all of your classes, try it for a couple of classes. So we're going to be very flexible as people learn the system.
And we are trying to look at that job embedded learning, so that on the release times, so the teachers have the opportunity to visit classrooms when it's already in session, the peer recommendations. Then we're doing a lot, I wouldn't exactly say it's professional development, but technical assistance on a lot of the Google Meet add-ons that can extend the capability of the tool. So those things are all actively happening. And I think the survey information will also give us more information about what teachers would like to see that they need. The initial survey that went out was just to the very first participants, and they've only been doing it for like a week in some cases. So I think by December 14th, we'll be at more of a midpoint, and our surveys leading to that can really see, is that something that you need, or how many people need that, and that would probably be very telling for us as well about how to look at time. And I think we're fortunate in this district. When I think of the high school schedule, for example, the teachers do have PLC meetings, and particularly there, I would anticipate, but again, we can collect this information, having the opportunity to partner with your department colleagues about what's going to work best in your content area would be critical. We can do some of that in those structures. It's shorter periods of time, and that presents some limits, and I don't doubt just the opportunity to collaborate is always helpful in the field.
So I have to ask the financial question. How are we getting the funds for extra Chromebooks, extra platforms, all of this? Is this included in, will be reimbursed by the state because this is...
Right, so we were able to get an additional allotment of Chromebooks from the state.
Okay.
It was not a lot, I think it was 50 or 60 Chromebooks. And those are the ones that we are primarily using for this experience.
Okay.
And platform-wise, Google Meet we already have access to, so that's not a new expense.
The microphones we're using, I think we've settled in on one that's about $38. So there's not a huge expense to adjust to this model.
And I think we were able to invest up front as part of our COVID planning in some instructional materials, again, depending on grade level and subject area, that were designed to be more fluid across lanes, like if we were fully remote or hybrid. So I know a few of the teachers have identified that's been really helpful to have access to those instructional resources, which are not an expense as a result of this pilot, but were built into our planning. Yeah. Okay.
So, just keep in mind, we're in preliminary stages of the pilot. We're in preliminary discussions with teachers. Like I said, the teachers have been aware of this to one degree or another. Mary and I met with high school teachers today. We're meeting with middle school teachers tomorrow. We're looking for a start date and a willingness to pilot. So we'll have much more information for you on December 14th. So this is just like a little, tidbit of information because it's relevant to what we're going to do with the high school. For me to say we're going to be in hybrid, if it is long-term into January, then, I wanted to let you know that we need to find a hybrid plan with a little more educational oomph to it. So that was the purpose of bringing it up tonight. But I think we'll have more details for you on the 14th. So just as, and we can stay on this conversation as long as you want, I think, based on initial concerns with policy 6114.81, the temporary authority granted to the superintendent, and based on superintendent's recommendations moving forward, I just want people to feel like you have the opportunity to voice either concerns for the policy or concerns for these particular actions based on our own metrics, state metrics, policy, anything else.
I I have some concerns about the elementary going back in full right after Thanksgiving when we don't really know what that impact is going to be on the school and our community. Because right now, yes, we're seeing a lot of outside family gatherings and other issues with community spread, but this is happening within homes of our students. And so I just want to make sure that we're taking a really good look at that when it comes time to send them back.
Sure, so we do have that whole week before we come back. So if there's exposure during Thanksgiving, we're going to see it, 7 to 10 days later, which puts us right at the,
Right around that time.
Yeah.
Is that what the time is? What do the dates look like on it? Is it really like 10 days afterwards that?
It's
Yep,
pretty
it
close.
is.
Yeah.
It's like 11 days
Yeah.
maybe
Right.
to the day.
I have just a couple other quick COVID-related questions. I've been listening to the governor and the education commissioners on their interviews lately. And the two things that they seem to be really pushing that we haven't really talked a lot about are on-site testing for schools and this whole new letting teaching students come into the schools to help cover some of the staffing shortages. I was just wondering what your thoughts and everyone's thoughts are about those two issues.
Let's start with the second one first.
Okay.
Karen's going to give you a proposal that we increase the pay for subs. I think when we talked about college students, they were more as subs / paid intern type of things.
Yeah.
So we will get to that. We're going to have a proposal to increase the rate of subs. Right now, there is no state-supported plan for testing of students in the school setting. There are a couple of districts that with grants, Middletown is one that's able to provide testing to students, but it's not required of students and staff. If that opportunity became available where our nurse's office could do on-site testing, I would really like that. My concern is I don't want people who are sick saying, well, I'll just get tested at school and coming into school. So there's got to be a way to do it somewhere that doesn't expose people, but I don't think we are in line as a small community for that as of yet. So I'm not trying to skirt the question. I just know that we are not necessarily in line for we don't have a health-based clinic that's, families have a separate entrance or something like that.
The last couple interviews I've heard, this is like, what's going to save us?
Sure.
Is how they're,
Sure.
at least at the state level, presenting it. And I was curious how it applies to such a small town like us.
Yeah. We are certainly not opposed to it, but nobody's calling us and saying, we'll provide the funding so you can do testing of students and teachers right on site.
I think the success of that in that scenario is testing everybody regularly. So it's not just the people who
Correct.
are ill.
Right.
It's everyone walks in the building.
Yeah.
And if we just said, let's just test everybody, there's no setup for that without extreme costs.
Right.
I know the colleges have their own internal med programs doing it. Some of the private schools in Connecticut are doing, and it's almost $100 a person to do, to just do that on-demand testing at your school. Everybody's talking about the little thing that, ultimately you're going to be able to buy and do it at home. It'll tell you, I'm positive today. But that, we're not yet there. I think the vaccines will be out before some of those tests will be.
I didn't have any issue. I don't have any issues with the plan. And the 7th, on the 7th, especially given the fact that it's 10 days, and I should probably know the calendar better than that. But it does seem like it's going to be able to shake out any negative impacts for Thanksgiving. We'll know about it beforehand.
Right. If there was a large exposure in town as a result of the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of Thanksgiving, we're going to know about that the next week.
Yeah.
And when we get that Wednesday data or just look at the numbers of people that are staying home, we can push that December 7th back. I think it's been important every time we've gone into the hybrid, we've given families a clear date that we're coming out of it. Because I think I'm hearing more from people now concerned about, are they going to be able to go back to work, or what's going to happen? And I'm not one that has ever said that schools are daycare, but the hybrid makes it very difficult for working parents to be able to work, and
Particularly the younger grades.
and even families that work at home, having to make sure your kids are online. It's just as difficult as, maybe more difficult than just staying home and not working. So I'm trying to respect our plan that we said we were going to go into the hybrid 4 weeks and come out on December 7th. And I'd like to keep that timeline until something else dictates to us that it's just not going to be possible.
I would like to, and I don't know if I need to make a motion for this or what, or if I can right now, but this entire conversation that we've had for the past 15 minutes or whatever, with the dashboard and the numbers in East Hampton, and what the plan is to go back and, an update on the pilot, there can be a standing agenda item until we get to the end of this thing. Just in terms of being able to answer questions to people that, our neighbors who, are asking us what's going on in the schools. This is great information, to be able to.
Why don't we just, the first action of the superintendent's report, if people are comfortable, we just, COVID update on, dashboard and progress or status of hybrid learning, and, we'll make both of those standard.
With discussion, because we need to be able to kind of talk about this stuff as a group too.
Amanda?
I'm just wondering, and this is not necessarily even specific to us in East Hampton, but I know the governor wants the schools to stay open, and we got guidance of, with the different colors, and then that changed, and then it changed again, and, we're going with our own, which makes sense. But I'm just wondering, is there any, under what circumstances would we perhaps have to go remote?
Sure.
I
So,
realize nobody wants
if say we had 3 or 4 kids coming to the high school, and we find out they're positive, and we say, oh my goodness, these 3 or 4 kids, 7 classes each, now we've got a quarantine, 30 kids for each one, now we're at, 200 kids quarantine, and the teachers that feel like they're concerned, it reaches the point where we just need to shut down the building. We cannot operate. And that's what you're seeing, especially in high schools that close for a week or 2 weeks. But it's based on cases. And the governor will support any school that does that. I think the governor saying stay open, stay open, stay open there was a movement about 2 or 3 weeks ago to say, hey, look, we should just close down between the Monday before Thanksgiving and open up right after Christmas. And there were a lot of districts started talking about that, and the governor was saying, don't close for what might happen. Base your actions on what is happening. So the State Department is, in order for you to close for that long of a period of time, you've got to give some reason why you cannot stay open. Now, I know Bridgeport and Hampton and a few other large cities with much more complex issues than us have chosen to do that. But at this point, our numbers just don't indicate. If we have a Thanksgiving like people are predicting, our next board meeting could be a Zoom meeting, in fact. But I think just to say, hey, we're closed now to Christmas, but we're not going to keep the school open if we can't safely staff it, first of all. And it doesn't mean that the whole district shuts down. It could just be the high school. We had some challenges with the, Eric's listening, I know, Kissinger. Last Monday, we were concerned with a number of teachers that were not feeling well and got tested or felt they had been exposed. And, you know, we were concerned about staffing the building on that day. Through Eric and Christina's magic and them covering a few classes, we were able to keep the buildings open. But that is you know, that's one of our concerns as well. It doesn't take much to shut down a building. But, you know, like I said, you know, those are the likely cases for closing. Unless, you know, there's a big tick up and, you know, Russ Melman says, I am going to recommend that we close down the Chatham Health District. There was some talk about other health districts saying, you know, if this happens, we're going to close down the whole schools for 2-3 weeks. But I think it's going to take something like that rather than just a preemptive shutdown is something that nobody really wants to see.
That wasn't my question.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was just easier, it was clearer, like the parents, you could look at it and say, oh geez, we're creeping up to this number, I should start to make plans. I think that's kind of...
Right, and we were relying on, you know, okay, the state, the DPH said, okay, we're going to use yellow, orange, and red, and now that everybody's red, it's like, well, maybe we need red, redder, and very red. You know, according back to that other map that I showed you, you know, we are absolutely having a surge. Does it mean that we should close the schools? Not necessarily at this point until they start closing restaurants and gyms and other things. I mean, I think, you know, you look at New York City and the schools are closed, but everything else is open at this point. One thing for sure is when we, you know, hindsight always tells us what we should have done rather than what we should do at this point. One other thing on the superintendent's report, I remind you that Monday, December 7th is a tri-board meeting. It will be a Zoom meeting. We will send you the link. The purpose of the tri-board meetings is to just have preliminary budget discussions and some open conversation about what people are hoping to see or not see as far as budget for 21-22.
This is in place of the meeting that was requested by the Board of Finance?
Yes, when I went to the Board of Finance, they requested this meeting. Town Council was a little jealous that they perhaps were not invited and decided that it should be a tri-board.
This is what had been in the past.
Yeah. So that will be a tri-board meeting. It'll be 6:30. I'll send you the Zoom link. And then our next meeting is the 14th. And for those of you that are new, you're going to see a budget from us for 21-22 on January 11th.
And we're going to talk budget now, right?
Yes, we are. So the exercise for tonight, and the principals have been instructed to make this very brief. And if you would come down here and just so the people on the camera, the Zoom can hear you. What I asked them to do, and you have this in your packet, this was shared with the whole school community and teachers. These are all the budget requests from our November 9th meeting. You're going to get a thicker packet in 2 weeks when the principals hand me all of their requests for the year. This was just the requests that were voiced on November 9th. On December 1, everything is due from the buildings to me, and we'll kind of expand this and include that in there. So Andy, you look like you're ready to start to highlight a few things. And then if you have questions, we'll give you time for questions as well.
Yeah, so thanks again for your time. The two items I chose to highlight tonight are expanding the classroom libraries and the special education teachers, specifically in the ABA program. I think we've talked a lot about, and those of us in education know the best way to improve reading is to read. And we're really looking to diversify our classroom libraries. Our learners deserve to grow their skills while enjoying the diverse, high-interest text. Much has changed in our world and in our students' lives since the last time that these libraries were replenished. We're committed to making sure that these libraries reflect what's going on in society and prepares our learners to confidently navigate the society as it is now. Increasing these selections would give them more choice and make richer learning experiences. The ABA program, I pulled this quote right from our brochure. If they can't learn the way we teach them the way they learn. We're committed to teaching all our learners in East Hampton in their home schools. We're very proud of our specialized programs and how they've grown over the years. But Memorial's ABA program uses principles of applied behavior analysis to inform decision-making when it comes to academic and social development. And with our programs ballooning from servicing students in just one room to now 4 rooms at Memorial, we really need to have additional staffing to have fidelity of implementation.
Thanks. Chris?
Thank you. At Center School, the first item that I'd like to highlight is a special education teacher. In talking with Mr. Mosier, it's kind of a critical point in the Center School in terms of caseloads per teacher. So it is instrumental in closing the achievement gap for our learners. Our needs continue to grow, and our students deserve a level of staffing that best meets the needs of all learners. The number of students identified to receive IEP services at Center School has increased from 23 students in 2016. We are currently servicing 55 students at the end of 2020, and we anticipate, I can confidently say that that number will be a bit larger by the end of the school year. Second request is Duolingo for mastery of a foreign language and the appropriate introduction of advanced placement language opportunities in the high school. Students need earlier exposure to world language opportunities. I understand that a new program with full staffing may not be possible this year, but I feel this program would be a win-win. The model of language exposure offers learning anytime, anywhere. While it will never replace the instruction of a foreign language teacher, it can be accessed on Chromebooks both in school and at home for new programming at Center School and possibly at Memorial School as well.
Mr. Kissinger, would you like to chime in?
Yes, please. So one item that I have is new that I did not present a couple of weeks ago, and that would be a STEM coordinator for the middle school for 6-8. Having an expert in next generation science standards can really accelerate any type of instructional growth around STEM learning in our school. They can certainly bring design, and programmatic change with course design and curriculum. They can bridge content areas with interdisciplinary units of instruction. And our science teachers have done a really nice job, and they should be commended for their efforts with next generation science standards. They've had support from Mary. Mary has pointed them in the right direction of PD, but they've really done it alone without a resource on site. And I think that, as our elementary schools build those foundational skills for math and reading, to the middle school where we can really tackle some just higher level curriculum, more complex thinking. And, a STEM coordinator, like I said, can really kind of accelerate that STEM program. The other one would just be classroom furniture, flexible furniture. I talked about this at the last meeting. I think we put in a number of $25,000 for that. I think, going and looking at some of the resources out there where we can order from, I think that would unfortunately only cover about 4 classrooms, but that is certainly a start. And is needed for the students at the school right now, especially as we just kind of pivot with all of our instructional practices.
Thank you, Aaron. Mr. Werner.
So continuing on with our theme of science, technology, and engineering, my proposal and what I'm asking for is to increase offerings in both our science and our math department. We want to add an advanced placement chemistry and an advanced placement environmental science course for next year. These are 2 high-level offerings, and if you remember last year when we talked about my goals for East Hampton High School, it was for all students to have opportunities to take higher-level courses, especially in the science and math areas. So these are 2 classes that would, again, allow students to take college-level courses in high school, tying into that stated goal. And additionally, it would allow for the enhancement of our financial algebra course to offer more sections of that. As we're seeing, that's a clear need for students to have more skills in the financial world as they move forward from high school. So that would, those 3 courses would clearly enhance what we're doing in our science and math departments and prepare our students. Many of them go on to major in business in college, so it would allow them more opportunities to have experiences there. And then my second request, again, continuing with the science technology area, is to continue to enhance our robotics and technology education courses. With Ms. Richards, she's done a phenomenal job so far. But we want to keep feeding into the program that we're working with RAM to have our students attend. So we want to enhance our offerings there as well.
Mary?
There's two items that I proposed that I want to highlight. One is the data dashboard that I referenced, that in the grand scheme of expenses is on sort of the lower end. And this would allow us to streamline all of our student data procedures. So teachers are regularly collecting information on student performance, and we really need to be able to have this information in a teacher-friendly environment that also allows us to access historical data on students over time. So we have that data now, but it's in many different places, and pulling that data together in a user-friendly environment to support meetings with families, to be completely transparent, that is very labor-intensive for us. And so it lacks efficiency and is not as guaranteed as we really feel it should be in a district of our caliber in 2020. Additionally, the position of another instructional specialist at the K-5 level, I think is something that's highly in need. Memorial School always had 3 literacy specialists. We're down to 2. And I know Mr. Mosier, even though he is in the student services side of things, and I have discussed this, and he's in support of this as well, because of its, the position gives us a lot of opportunity to intervene early for learners, to when we identify students who need supports, to infuse them with as many interventions as possible, so that hopefully we can address any needs and help students find success and thrive. Right now we're taxed to do that to the degree that we would like to, particularly across math and literacy with consistency. More and more districts are using instructional specialists who can do both areas of math and literacy, and we'd really like to explore that model. Right now we have 1 specialist who oversees math and science at Memorial and Center School. So she's really running a lot of directions, providing direct intervention to students, overseeing curriculum and instruction for those 2 content areas, doing data analysis of student performance, and representing the work that we're doing in our intervention program for math at student meetings, which is a very involved process and one that requires a lot of attention. So we truly feel we are understaffed in that area to meet the needs of our students and families.
So at this point, and if you want to ask questions, you may. At this point, what will happen is, these were the requests, except for one made by Mr. Kissinger, that all were presented on November 9th. On November 13th, all of the requests from the buildings were due to the principals. They're in the process of prioritizing them, and they're due to me on December 1. So on December 14th, we'll give you this packet, and there will be more that have come in since then. So you'll have, some of the unique requests. For new board members, as much as we would like to add all of this, we're lucky if we can add 1 or 2 or some of the less expensive things as time goes on. So this is a wish list and not a reflection of what we expect to get. But I think it's important each year for us to hear those things that really start to make our district move forward. And you'll notice with a lot of these, they're not cutting edge. Some of them could be described as basic needs or just basic curricular enhancements to things that we already have. We're not proposing vastly new programming or vastly different things than we already have in place. Any questions for any of the principals? Go ahead.
What is the recommended caseload for a special ed teacher? And does it vary from elementary to high school?
I would say that it's unique year to year based on the caseload. It's I wouldn't say a number per se, attached to a special education case manager, but our students are becoming more and more complex, and we want to make sure that we, adequately support them. And typically, with some of our students moving through at the elementary level and on into the upper elementary with 4th and 5th grade, we're kind of layering in those services as they go as well. So we feel that we're kind of getting by with the system that we have, obviously, and we always say all of our regular education teachers are also special education teachers. They're all of our students. But in terms of, just the legalities around what is the best program for all of our individual learners, we want to ensure that we can provide them with the absolute best mode of instruction.
Amy, I would say there's not a recommended number. There's averages and what's typical. And that still ranges district to district. And it's hard to say every case manager should have this number because of the EIP driving the intensity of the services. And therefore, it's not always everyone needs to have 10 or something like that, or 20. That wouldn't necessarily reflect an appropriate allocation of responsibility. So,
are we at the point with these positions that if we don't get them, that we'll have to pull from another position, like cut down other services because we're legally, from my understanding, we're legally bound to provide these services? So, are we approaching that point at center?
I would have to ask Rod to give us a better sense of that. I will be candid with you. Last year, we were able to add a couple of classroom teachers at center and a classroom teacher at the high school and middle school world language. So we added 4 teachers in last year. What I'm asking Karen to do as the first initial step of the budget is let me know how much it costs just to move everything over into next year. And I'm going to give you that figure. And then we're going to look and say, okay, can we afford to add 1 or 2 teachers to this? Or do we look at some of those classroom teachers that we added and say, well, it would be nice to have this classroom teacher, maybe we need to have a special education teacher instead. Because I think teachers would tell you, they need the support. A few more kids in their class, but with an extra special ed teacher may be the way to go. But until we have that sense of exactly what you're asking, I just want to hold off on that conversation for now. But I think that's the type of conversation that we're going to end up having.
Paul, if I can just add to that, I think Rod is prepared to discuss those issues and how to maintain compliance. That's really what that's what the district has a responsibility to do.
Well, I'm wondering with what you were saying about the support at Memorial and the increase in numbers that you're seeing. Is there a correlation with the students not getting necessarily the support and early intervention and then being identified by the time they get to 4th?
I don't think we could say that there's definitely a correlation. And it's not that students aren't getting those supports. It's just the specialists can do 2 important things. And what we do know is the more we intervene early, we should see an impact on need, and we seem to be seeing increased needs. But they not only can support small group instruction through the tiers of intervention, but they can also support tier 1 instruction with classroom teachers. So if there's not time in their schedule to go push into classrooms and support teachers, we're not growing that practice. And right now, a lot of their time, well, this year is sort of different because they're supporting a lot of remote learning, but a lot of their time is dedicated to direct service to students, and they're not really able to grow practices in the classroom as much as we would have intended for their positions. So I think Memorial's a pretty big school, so from a staffing perspective, making sure that we have coaches available to support all teachers and all learners with only 2 students in a school of that size, 2 specialists in a school of that size, there's limits just in how many places they can be at any given time.
Jim and Justin have questions.
Justin, go first.
Okay. New guy question. Are these requests that you've identified tonight, are these ongoing year after year, or are these newly identified? Anybody?
Several of them have been brought up in the past. The elementary world language teacher. We're always looking for, additional specialists, as Mary mentioned, the people who can work with children one-on-one, small group instruction and things like that. So Some of these are not new requests. Jim?
On the question about choosing books for the library, is there a process that you go through to pick books? And if there is a process, are you able to let us know what those books are?
Definitely. So before any ordering, we would vet all of them. That started last year a little bit. Mrs. Clark directed the specialist to be doing inventories within our classrooms. That is something, again, with their role and all that they have their hands in, we'd have to carve out time for them to get into these classrooms. We'd ask our teachers for support with that as well, to better understand what are the needs in the classrooms and match the needs with what we want to purchase.
And the teachers would provide those needs, or is that you understand their needs?
They would play, yeah, they would play a role in it. Obviously, they know their classrooms best, but through our order history and through the inventory that would be conducted by the specialist, we would be able to make a very informed decision.
Now, these aren't just library books, are other books too?
No, these are the actual classroom.
Oh, classroom, okay, I'm thinking library books, okay.
Yeah, these are for each individual classroom.
Okay, I'm glad you clarified that, because I was thinking library books, and I was wondering why, okay, you made that clear. That's good.
Jim, they don't take as long to read as the AP US history book that you volunteered to read last year.
All right, gotcha. And then, thanks for clarifying that. I do have one other question. What is flexible furniture? Forgive me, I just don't know.
Eric, I don't see your face, but if you're still there, we'll let you answer that. I don't, there we go. Oh, no, we just lost Eric. Okay, he ran away when you were asked.
I call it reconfigurable furniture. So
instead of
modular, can you say the word modular? That makes sense to me.
Modular is, yeah, I mean,
I might
modular
be
more
dating
prescriptive,
myself.
but yeah.
I look at, is it modular, same thing?
Instead of the big old clunky desks. Eric,
Yeah, so if you want to put kids in groups of 4, the desks might have these wheels on them, they roll over, slide them in, they connect to a group, and then you put them back where they were afterwards. Same thing with chairs, like that, furniture of that nature.
Okay, all right.
Jim, I think the middle school still had the desks where their chair was attached to the desk. That
Did we sit on that or something like that? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think
your initials are still carved in there.
And your bubble gum's still underneath.
And when the teachers tried to put them together, your kids would have to climb over that. It's just not,
Yeah.
it doesn't allow any, the furniture and the classroom layout should reflect the intent of the lesson. Are we collaborating? Are we working independently? Are we having a conversation where we're turning and looking at each other? That's the vision of flexible classroom furniture, is to give the layout to have a connection to the teaching point.
I'm used to sitting in the tubular chairs with the particle board seats, and that's what I'm not thinking that's what flexible furniture is. That's what my rear end was used to sitting in my days in school. All right, thanks. I will do a Google search just to see what visions.
We will arrange for you to see some of the high school flexible furniture, some of the middle school flexible furniture versus, some of the other classrooms.
Okay. Very good.
Are we thinking about putting any of those items in capital, like the furniture, and have we broken those items out from here yet?
Yeah, it's possible that some of that could be put in capital. I know they've had the first capital meeting. Capital tends to be more of, larger items and HVAC systems and things like that. You see, we're trying to pull some of the Chromebooks out of capital, which requires a 1-year bump up of our budget, and that's Nancy Cola, who's listening, probably could give us an update after the next capital meeting, unless you're prepared to give a quick update at this point, Nancy.
So there really wasn't, it was a very brief, or not, it wasn't brief, it was actually quite long. An overview, Rich talked about some of the things that he was looking for. Don Harwood went through some of the bigger building items, and then it was, a review from the police chief. There really wasn't anything specific at this point. There's no plan. It was really just sort of an overview of the requests at this point.
I had a question about, well, actually, it was, one of my questions was about the classroom libraries. Are those, I don't know if you sort of answered, I was picturing being like sets, like some sort of package set from somewhere. Is it like that, or does it really get down to
Yeah, so
individually?
our specialist in their initial search to help with the proposal was able to locate a company that would package something. We don't necessarily have to go with one company or one set, but a lot of these places do put stuff together that you can select from.
Okay. So would you?
But we would get one, we would try to get the same set for the classrooms in that grade level.
Oh, that was my
So
question.
that
If
the
they were
kids would have
different or the same.
guaranteed
Yeah.
experiences and access to the same materials.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was picturing either all the same for that reason or different and then being able to, well, not really with COVID now, but being able to trade off and switch so that you actually have.
Yeah, we would want to make an equitable purchase
Yeah,
across
okay.
the classrooms in each grade level.
Okay.
Now, what that looks like in each grade level, that could be different.
Yeah.
But if we were ordering, let's say for grade 2, we would want to make sure that every classroom in grade 2 got that.
Okay. Okay.
Nancy, the publisher of our reading and writing curriculum does make recommendations for text to support the units. And those are very, carefully vetted and selected and matched to the level of the learners for engagement. They make recommendations about books that connection skills you're teaching across skill level as well. So that's like an example of a resource we can explore. In addition to wanting to make sure that classroom libraries are reflective of our students and their lives and the larger world within which they live, and giving them diversification of their libraries in that way. And we do have systems so they can take out books from the classroom library, put them back, make sure they're safe in their chair.
And then just dovetailing off of what Mary just said, I think that the latter example she shared about the reflection of their life and the diverse world we live in is an area of more importance to me at this point, knowing what our libraries look like. I think we do have a great deal of resources and our students are very fortunate that the materials that they have match what they're being taught. That also is an ongoing improvement effort and we shouldn't forget about that, but I think the diversification is a little bit more of a priority.
Okay. And a mix of fiction and nonfiction?
Sure.
for them?
Yes, for sure.
I know there's been a heavy move to nonfiction, but so it would be a mix.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just wondering. And then I wanted to ask about the Duolingo programming. It looks like a great value as far as the cost goes, but who oversees that for the kids? How does that look, if you have that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's initial in the thought process of how we would implement that within our school day. There'd be 2 goals. Number one, that all students have access to it. So it could be set on almost within the specials rotation, that all students would have time on that program. Another thing that we could do is within adding time onto, let's say, we have a flex block. So there are students that have their intervention services. If all students come back, on the tail end of that, there is a time set. If it was a once a week exposure or whatever we saw was the best use of the program, to make sure that that was guaranteed time within our schedule for all of our students. So because of the nature of it, I feel that it'd be kind of open to any staff member to oversee that because they are not doing the actual kind of teaching of that content. It's more the management of that particular program. So that's kind of why I selected that for its ease of use and easy access. Basically, it's kind of a prepackaged program that we could hit the ground running with.
Okay, and that provides enough, whatever you planned in here, the cost provides, is that seats?
License per person for our particular site, yes.
Yeah, so it would.
You can go online and look at Duolingo. It's actually a free program if you don't mind ads. We would not want ads for the students, but it's multiple languages and lessons. Just Google Duolingo and start learning another language.
The public library offers it too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. And they can take it with them on their Chromebooks if they want to.
The students who are really interested in this could just push through as far as they wanted to go as well.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good information.
Now, another question. Did last budget season, did we purchase dismissal apps? I see there's another one for K through 8. Or is that something different?
Yes, we did purchase it, but we added it very late, knowing that it did not go through the budget process. It's something we added, given what we figured was going to be the large amount of people driving to school. Now that we've used it, we are proposing that we continue with it.
Okay, so it's a re-up on a subscription of
Yes.
sorts. Okay, understood. And last question I had, at least for the moment, is, and I might be mischaracterizing how we do this, but if we have outside students coming in with special needs, they would be paying a tuition still, and that could offset the cost of a new teacher or two, the tuition money being brought in. If Rodney's IC is requesting a couple special ed.
Correct.
teachers, so the tuition money would offset.
Yes, but I think some of the special ed teachers we're suggesting, we would not be able to fund with tuition money, because they would be serving our general population rather than our specialized programs.
Okay.
Other towns are more interested in small specialized programs that are too expensive for them to start. But I think we're looking at more, instead of our STARS program, we're looking at just general special ed teachers.
Okay.
For our students who are mainstream most of the day.
Okay. And who are East Hampton residents?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so not
We don't have students, the only tuition students we have are in our small specialized programs.
Because I saw the number of increase, well, I forget the numbers, but it jumped up a couple of dozen people. The expectations of children with special needs increased.
Well, I think that's a 4 or 5 year growth.
Okay, maybe that could be what I saw.
Yeah. Some of the numbers, I think Rod gave you, here's where we were 4 or 5 years ago, here's where we are now.
Okay.
It's not a 1 year growth.
Okay.
Paul, if I could go back to the school dismissal manager and, Chris, please jump in. Not knowing exactly what dismissal will look like next year, I think that's a wise thing to consider for next year's budget. But also, even if conditions were to improve and we could go back to some of our old practices, this application has been really beneficial to our office staff. It has decreased the amount of phone calls that come from parents on a daily basis about pickup plans because it's going through the app. And it also adds a nice layer of accountability because the people who are picking up, it documents and stores all of that data.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a situation with a family where there was uncertainty whether it was mom's turn or dad's turn to pick up, who did they go home with. So we had basically a registrar of where that student was, who had registered at the time, who they went home with, so we could confidently say to the one parent that called, who picked up my child, we said, well, they were picked up by this person at this time, and we have a record of it.
And that would be an expense every year that we use that, assuming that our situation continues on. And then if it goes back to normal, then it's not an expense line item.
Correct.
I think what we're saying is that the school dismissal apps were not created in response to COVID. A lot of school districts use school dismissal apps because of the enhanced safety and efficiencies that they provide, because parents have a direct way to update their drop-off pickup plans. And I think parents, that can shift dramatically. There's a lot of different aspects to family life that the front offices are managing. And so the fact that parents can go through the app to make changes to their pickup plans or drop-off plans, it's a huge efficiency for the schools. And it's increased safety because of the record keeping that Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Gonzalez were speaking to, that we really can track that carefully. We've always tracked our students very carefully, but it's just an enhancement that reduces the possibility of human error.
I think it also puts more of an onus on the parents. I mean, right before we left, I changed one of my kids' pickups for tomorrow, as opposed to, handing in a paper that can get lost, or, you're the parent, you've made this decision to change dismissal tomorrow, and it's on you to do it in the app, instead of the secretary is chasing everyone down at the end of the day.
When my kids graduated here in 2016, I think it was a paper. I was back in the paper days. I don't remember an app or doing anything like that. Was that?
And we were doing it by paper up until this year.
Oh, okay.
And we're employing it K-8 because of the fact that high school students, the student plays a different role. But where we have young children who need to be supervised and a lot of high volume, I think the number of people who are passing through Memorial School potentially at the end of the day with their children is just tremendous.
Understood.
Any other questions tonight? I'm sure we'll have more. Thank you.
There is a change in the calendar. This is second read, but we communicated a change to you in trying to line up with shoreline towns. Even though we had aligned with Learn in the shoreline towns, a lot of towns decided to push back April vacation by 1 week because the February vacation was a little bit later in numbers. It was only 6 weeks between February and April. This gives us kind of 7 weeks. It does add Good Friday, the 15th, back into the calendar instead of during the vacation. So we've added 1 day at the end. The last day would be Friday, June 10th.
Okay. Given that, do we have a motion to approve the 2021-2022 school calendar as recommended by the superintendent of schools?
So moved.
Amanda? Jim? Any discussion?
So just to clarify that the April vacation change aligns it with the other districts in the area then?
With the other shoreline communities,
Okay.
yes.
Anything else? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. And now we have some first reads. Let's see.
We do.
First read of policy, yes. Jeff.
First read policy 0210, mission, goals, and objectives for student accomplishment. So this we reworked a bit to use the student portion of the school mission, the district mission, which is policy 0000. I believe that was the bulk of the change, was to make that align with the mission district. Now, next was 0220, which I believe we removed, yes?
We're recommending that you omit it. You can vote on it tonight if people are comfortable.
Look at that.
It was a little redundant.
Sorry.
Does anybody have questions on that? It was just dealt with elsewhere, I believe. That's why we recommend.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's in my just about my notes. That it was redundant to use elsewhere. It's also a policy that is rarely used by other districts, so it's not one that's we're required to use or anything.
Okay.
Do we want to make a motion?
Sure.
Okay, I'll make a motion to omit policy 0220, goals for student operations, from our policy manual.
Second. Is everybody okay? Questions? No? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. And another first read.
Yes, 300. So policy 0300, policy 300. This was just trimming of some language. There was not a tremendous amount of change to this. Remove one sentence, a couple of the words. And it was, I don't think it was based on any, no, this was not something that the legislature required us to change. It was just going through this series of policies of trimming language.
Yeah, it looks like we, you can see from the highlighted parts, we just tied in the recent policies that we revised, the mission and vision, the philosophy, the goals and objectives, just to make sure that everything's consistent across policies. So that's a first read. Any questions? Okay. And we have, and Karen will be talking about this, Paul, yes, the proposal for increase for substitute teacher pay.
Yes, Karen, it's all you.
This year, we started out, increased our teacher pay from the prior daily rate of $85 a day to $92 a day, but adjoining communities throughout this year have continued to increase their daily sub rates to the point now where East Haddam is at $125 a day, Grand, Middle, and High, and Marlboro Elementary are at $100 a day, Glastonbury is at $97.50. The majority of substitutes utilize the same districts are utilizing the same sys finding system so that substitutes a very competitive market. They can look at what surrounding towns are offering for jobs that they have tomorrow in a very short time so that they can compare the possibilities. So to increase, we would recommend going from the 92 to 105. And the cost to the district for this is less than the cost of adding a full-time staff person. And of course, there's no benefits offered to these jobs, but it'll give an opportunity for us to have a better chance to keep this building staffed and to provide the subs to cover the times that you can see for the desired professional development for the teachers. So $105.
Karen, what does that $105 from 92 to 105, what is that total for the year in estimation? A few $1,000s, or am I way
No,
more?
probably about 25.
Oh, wow, okay. Don't ask me to add again.
Yeah.
I think it's also pretty hard to anticipate what it might be,
Yeah.
particularly this year.
Yeah.
You know. But I know that Bob has been mentioning this for several years now. Is when we come up for budget suggestions, as a sub. I don't mean to speak for you, Bob, but as a sub, so it's something that has been on the minds of those who are in the classrooms.
And Bob, I'd give you $150 a day.
Take that.
Yeah.
Do we have a different pay rate for long-term subs versus short-term?
What kind of thing?
Like a
Oh,
long-term
yes.
sub? It is different. So this would just be for short-term subs? Daily subs?
daily
The
subs,
daily
yes.
rate? Okay, all right, sorry. Yes.
And this has proven to be a very difficult thing recently, hasn't it? I mean, when, like you said, people can compare. I mean, don't we have trouble on occasion?
Yes.
Rather often, I would say. I don't know.
Just Monday through Friday.
I mean, it's a real problem though.
Yes,
So
it
when
is.
you don't have a person in a class, somebody has to do it, right? And so it's a true issue. Yeah.
Many people who sub actively sub in other districts. I mean, that's very often the case. So they are looking at, and they might be a sub for us, and also East Hampton and Colchester. So that's a real, it's a very practical issue for the building principals in trying to run their site, and then it's a legitimate thing that if you're sub and the government district willing to. And East Hampton, it's a competitive market, right?
Yeah, and East Hampton's been advertising in the River East at that level too, so. Yeah, we will be too. Good, this year, hopefully.
Is this something that we're making a motion on and deciding tonight?
We would appreciate it. I
Yes.
think we need to get going on it.
Okay.
It is listed under somewhat new business.
Yeah.
So I mean,
New old
so do we need
business.
a motion to
Yep.
approve the increase in the substitute pay from 92 to 105 per day? So.
Okay.
Couple of hands up. Was that a question or just a?
No, that was a second.
Okay, there's a second from Chris.
So I guess if we're in discussion, the remaining question is, I mean, how do we have the budget to sustain that delta for the year?
I think given where we are, we've got to make the funds for it. Now, keep in mind, if we're in remote, our sub costs go down to zero. But I think, if we can't staff because we don't have subs, then it's an issue for everybody. So I think it's an investment worth making at this point.
Could subs serve a role to help a teacher teaching in remote? Or is that not how the sub system would work?
No, if we do not have, if we are in remote learning, we would not require subs.
But maybe let me reword my question. Could a sub be helpful to a teacher teaching in remote?
Not likely. Our paraeducators would do that.
You mean like co-teaching sort of?
Yeah, or, yeah.
Like being on a
co-teaching.
Zoom, it would,
Yeah.
okay.
That's what our paraeducators would be expected to do in remote.
Any other questions or discussion? Anyone on Zoom? Nancy? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
You're not allowed to vote.
You're waving?
I was waving to them.
Yeah, they all said yes.
They were waving, they were raising their hands, and it was like, okay, we saw you.
Okay.
So I'm modeling good Google Meet practices, keeping people involved in the conversation.
Is there any particular future business that we did not bring up?
I forgot to ask a question earlier. Have we gotten the DATCO situation resolved? Are the bus drivers getting paid on Wednesdays? Have we had
Karen and I found out that the bus drivers are not currently being paid on Wednesdays. We are still working to resolve the issue. Our offer of paying 80% for non-use days that we had an agreement with them last year. We're hoping that they'll accept that, but I think they're waiting to see if we will offer 100% or what the conditions continue to be.
Anything else?
Karen, any updates on that you want to share?
No, I think they're waiting to see if there can be some edicts from the governor that might be different than last year, but we're holding to the same agreement that we offered last year.
Okay. The next item, I don't think we have any personnel actions. Nope. And audience of citizens. Yes.
And Pauline, you basically just straightened something out for me, and that with the new system you're talking about with the hybrid learning with the cameras, how are the subs going to be dealing with that when we're subbing for a regular class? I know on the Wednesdays when it's a remote, it used to be a different situation. Like you said, you can have a para do it.
Right.
But let's say if you're subbing for a regular history class.
Right. So one of the things that we're working with teachers on is if they're home quarantining and they're feeling fine, or they've got to take time off because someone in their house is ill, what that allows us to do is put a substitute in the room, but the students who are there and the students at home could Google Meet in and treat it like a distance learning Wednesday. So our hope is that subs would, still provide the supervision, but, the teacher would be able to Google Meet in. If the teacher is ill, then they would still send sub plans, but it would not necessarily be able to offer a Google Meet.
Okay. Anything else? The calendar of events, we talked about the tri-board meeting, it's a Zoom meeting on the 7th, 6:30.
You'll get the link to that?
The link, our next regular meeting is December 14th.
Yes.
And if we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.